Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guest here today, well, first of all, everyone should recognize our guest if you've been a long-time listener. We have Hayley back on the podcast coming to us from Columbus, Ohio, where, hopefully the weather is better than it is here, but we are having a decent day here in Minnesota, so I have no idea. But yeah, she's on here to give us an update on what she's been up to, and I know she's getting ready for a show, and it's funny. We had her on September 9th the last time, and it's September 7th now, so it's been almost a year exactly since we last had her on, but why don't you just give us an update on what you've been up to and what you're currently preparing for?
So in terms of bodybuilding, so after we talked last time, it was right after I competed at North American, so I got my pro card. Since then, still working with my same coach, Derek Natcher. Since North Americans, we kind of took like a good, 2 to 3 month health phase, got my health in check, biomarkers in check, make sure my body was feeling good just after a long, hard prep and everything. And then after that, we kind of went full force into a full off season mode because he and I both talked about it, and we knew that going from amateur to pro level, a couple things, a lot of things I needed to work on, but mainly just overall size and conditioning. A lot of those things just come with time. But I do feel really, really good about the progress we were able to make. We did have a solid, gosh, I want to say at least 6, 8 months of growing. I want to say, if not more. Um, and fortunately, didn't have any issues. No real injuries, anything like that. He just fed the crap out of me, and I focused on, you know, executing my lifts better each day, getting stronger each day, and yeah, and then we started probably around 3 or 4 months ago. We started kind of pulling things back a little bit, and we're kind of coming down now, working towards my pro debut, which right now we're shooting for Arizona, which is in like 8.5 weeks. So time's ticking, but it'll go super fast.
I'm sorry, but why would you ever want to go to Arizona? It's going to be like 110 degrees there, even though it's going to be like in December. I don't.
No, it won't be that bad. Have you ever been to Arizona?
I'm proud to say I have not.
See, so you can't say that.
But I've had friends that live there now that move there, and they talk about how, like, if you want to do your cardio, you got to walk at like 4 a.m. because that's the only time during the day that like it's like warm enough to do that. But there was a video that my friend made when it was like 115 this summer, like it was the one of the hottest it got, where he was, as a joke, just putting eggs out in his driveway and watching them fry a little bit. But I guess it won't be that bad. And again, like, I have friends that also live in Flagstaff where they're up in the mountains, so it's like normal temperature there and stuff. So it's not too bad. But yeah, taking 2 months off, that must have been nice for your body. Did you enjoy yourself at least nutrition wise during those 2 months?
Oh yeah, and even throughout my off season, I still enjoy myself. My fiance and I, or gosh, fiance, he's my husband now. I'm used to calling him my fiance. He's gonna get on me for that.
Is there
But
someone else, Haley, that we should be talking about now?
no, I promise, it's just him.
Polygamy is a big thing in Columbus, apparently. Yeah.
So we took some trips, enjoyed ourselves. We still, we're the type that we've always lived the bodybuilder lifestyle. We always eat clean, we train hard. We'll enjoy ourselves and eat, some free meals here and there. But honestly, this last off season was definitely the cleanest I kept it, throughout the entire off season compared to previous off seasons for me. And everyone's a little bit different when it comes to that, but I just knew personally, I knew going from amateur to pro, there are quite a few things I would need to change, and this is a big step to, a whole nother level. These girls at the pro level are insane. So, I really focused this past year on, changing my mindset, changing some habits, and making sure that, what I'm doing is going to put me, where I want to be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So yeah.
Well, thank God, because I cannot tell you how many guests I have on where their off season is just, I mean, them eating more food, but it's not like enjoying like and eating other types of food where it's just like, yeah, I have more chicken and I have more rice. And it's like, so I love to hear that some guests, actually try to experience life a little bit more to the fullest, at least maybe a little bit, in their off season, which is,
Yeah.
great as well. But when you won your pro card, I mean, that is a moment that I love to talk about on the show because so many people don't understand that that is the highlight for so many people's careers, even if they go on to accomplish great things as a pro. Just the moment when they finally realize, like, oh my God, I'm a pro now is so huge for them. What was that moment like for you?
Um, it was amazing. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that is something. When I started competing, I never really. Eventually, I got to the point where, like, yeah, I want to get my pro card. That's something I want to do. I've always been a very goal oriented person, and I'm the type where I say I'm going to do something and I do it. So, but I didn't really, when I first got into bodybuilding, that wasn't my initial goal. There's a lot of pros where they knew the second they started competing, they wanted to be on the Olympia stage. Um, and that wasn't me from the beginning. I really just started competing because, I was a marathon runner and I had a lot of running injuries and I still wanted to stay active, but I also just didn't have a good knowledge of like diet and nutrition. So I just wanted to get better at like fueling my body. And then from there, I mean, it just obviously we talked about it on the last podcast, but the rest is history. Um, but you always have to have a balance. That's the way you said. Like I think there's things when I look back at my training, my diet, what have you. There's always things I could have done more. I could have done better. Could I have lifted heavier? Yes, but you also have to think about the risk benefit to everything we're doing here. And in my opinion, I would much rather train at a more moderate weight, moderate intent, well, still high intensity, but more moderate weight, but make sure I'm controlling the weight, I'm executing the lift properly, I'm, engaging the muscle that I want to engage. I'm going to get way more out of that than doing the same lift, but packing on a bunch more what muscle and then potentially running the risk of injury, potentially, running the risk of, really bad things down the road. So there's with everything we do, but especially bodybuilding, it's always about you got to balance things out, and that's different for everyone.
I was shaking my head because I forgot that you're a marathon runner, and that's a mental illness that I don't even want to tap into because
We talked about that last time.
I know,
But now
yeah.
I'm a bodybuilder. Both require a little bit of crazy, so it
Oh,
makes sense. I just
absolutely.
went
Like
from
I
one.
have never said that any of my guests are completely sane, and that's why I like talking to them. Though I mean, it's like I've always said, you'll never see a Ned Flanders being a bodybuilder, just because it's just you can't have that mentality and be a bodybuilder. Now I've ran into one that was pretty close to that, and I was like, they're just hiding it deep down that like they're a psychopath, like deep down, and they're just like they just don't want to admit it to themselves. That's fine. I don't want to bring that out in them, but I do
Sure.
gotta say because I go on walks now all the time, and it's I actually had to lose some weight because I got to a point where I was having trouble with like sleep apnea because my neck and my stuff was getting too big and stuff. So the doctors were like, "Hey, you can either lose some weight or like you gotta like go on like a sleep apnea." And I was like, "But I want to like be like muscular and bigger." And they're like, "Well, your body just isn't. I'm just one of those not." I'm not meant to be like a big person, but and there's people that are like that. Like that's the whole genetic thing with bodybuilding. So I had to lose some of that. So I've been walking a lot, but how when you were marathon running, how did you keep your mind entertained for that long a period of time? Because I go on walks for like an hour, and if I don't have music or anything like that, like I don't know how these people are able to do it.
Oh yeah, music is my best friend. I've always loved music. I mean, from being a kid, I've always loved music. So usually music is my go-to. I mean, that's why I love training in the gym. I just, put my headphones on, blast the music, just get my work done. So, and it was the same thing when I ran. Every once in a while, I listen to podcasts, audiobooks, things like that, but music is usually my thing. There's a special, I think, emotional connection that I think everyone gets with music to a sense, but I especially love music in that way.
I only listen to podcasts when it's like late at night and I might go for a walk because I know I'm not going to run into people because there have been times where during the day if I'm listening to a podcast and I start laughing and I'm walking like next to someone, like they think that I'm the craziest person that's ever lived. Like I'm just like, and then I'm like right next to someone, and they're like, "Oh, is this person gonna stab me or like rob me or something like that?" And I'm just like, "No, it's I'm listening to Tim Dillon or I'm listening to a Joe Rogan. Like it's nothing. I'm just laughing because of that." So I learned that way. It's like you might want to when you're outside at dark during the dark, and that might be a time when you can get away with laughing maybe a little bit more if you're not running into people. So yeah, yep, there is that, but you talked a little bit about like the time under tension technique that you like to use, and so many people don't understand that technique, especially when they get started in the gym. How long did it take for you to sort of develop that mind to muscle connection that is required, especially with time under tension? Because for some people it takes them a very short period of time, and then other people I've been talking to, it takes them years.
You're right. It's very person dependent.
And it's
And
body part dependent too. You could have really
I
good
was
time under
just
tension for your arms, and your legs could take you years. Yeah.
I was just going to say that because for me personally, and I think this is true, this is probably common for a lot of people, but my husband and I talk about this a lot. But everything like behind you, so like your back, your hamstrings, your glutes, those always people tend to have the most trouble getting that mind to muscle connection, the activation in those areas. And I don't know if it's because they're behind you, you can't see them, but those, especially my back, my lats, that is something that I'll be honest took me years. And it's something that I'll notice, even I'll have to catch myself, especially if I'm training back. Every once in a while I'll I'll catch myself if I'm just kind of going through the motions, or if I'm not really like focusing on the squeeze, I'll kind of have to snap myself into it. Um and it just a lot of it comes with time, a lot of it comes with having a basic knowledge of like your basic body mechanics, your musculature, anatomy. I mean, you don't have to, granted, I know I'm a nurse practitioner and I have all this healthcare background. You don't have to have a healthcare background to understand basic body mechanics and how your body moves and how the muscles insert. And especially, honestly, if you're a competitive bodybuilder, I mean, you should know that stuff. That should be baseline. So just basic knowledge of how your body moves will also cue you in on, how I should, pull my elbows back on this row and lead with my elbows to kind of get that lat contraction, or the lower I put my hands and the lower I keep my hands, that hits a little bit lower on my lats versus higher, you're going to hit higher on the back. So there's a lot of things that come with time and a lot of things that come with just like educating yourself. YouTube is a great tool. Just talking with other people. One thing I just told one of my clients yesterday in the gym is something you always have to keep, and in terms of training, is an open mind. Because I think so many, not just bodybuilders, just people in general who train, they get so stuck in their ways. And just because something has worked for you for a certain period of time, one doesn't mean that it's the best way to do it, or two doesn't mean that your body's going to keep responding that way. Our bodies are always changing and adapting. So it's really important to keep an open mind and be able to learn new things and implement new things, because most of the time you never end up realizing until you actually try something and you're like, oh, okay, that actually works better you know
From the ages of 17 to 21, I did the same exact workout program. Never changed it up once. And obviously, I saw great results basically from the first year or two. And then it got to the point when I was like 20, 21, I was like, okay, I'm seeing probably about 10% of the results that I saw, early on. So then that was my crash course into mixing things up. And yeah, you cannot keep the same routine at once. And would it surprise you though if I did say that my back was the best mind to muscle connection I have out of any muscle group by far, like even more than arms? My back was always the one thing that developed me, because like in college I had warehouse jobs where you were loading trucks and you got a really nice back, and it was, I don't know why, but like for me, like just being able to feel like every part of my back. And when I was a kid, like whenever I'd go to the gym, like as a teenager or whatever like that, especially like in school, I would be the guy that would just be on that rowing machine. That's really all I would do. I love that rowing machine. And then we live in a lot of land, 10,000 lakes, so I go on a lot of kayaks and canoes. So I just think that background of just doing all that stuff, where like you kind of just inadvertently learned more about that muscle group than a lot of things. It's like, yeah, I'm talking about doing the rowing machine for like 45 minutes, just doing that, yeah. So I was that kid in like eighth grade. Yeah. That was just, oh, there's Ryan doing the rowing machine and stuff like that. So, hey, Hey, it worked out for my back at least in the end. But yeah, is there one? What would you say is one body part that you've improved on the most since we last had you on last year?
Going back to back, I would probably say my back, because that's always been a weak area for me. And I think probably because going off of what I was saying before, it took me so long to get that connection. Um, but this past off season, we really focused on hitting my back hard. Um, and I was hitting my back multiple times a week, doing compound movements, width movements. I do a lot of pull ups, which has really helped with my width a lot. I mean, I improved overall, and I think I've kind of fine tuned. Obviously, with bodybuilding, we always want to get better, improve everything every time, right? But yeah, my back was definitely a focus for me, and so far I'm happy with the improvements we've been able to make.
The one thing that I wish, like they would, I wish, like if you decide, like, hey, I want to be a bodybuilder, then of course I wish that there'd be like a demon or something that would appear and be like, you have to sign this contract then, and at the bottom of the contract, it needs to say like, P.S. You are never going to be big enough. You are never going to be good enough. You are always going to think that like the whole body dysmorphia thing, because that is the
Yeah,
one thing where I'm sorry, that's the funniest thing to me, because like I talk to some of those in shape people on the planet, and they're talking about like, oh, I don't look big enough, I don't look good enough, and I was like, I just want to just throw them in front of a mirror and be like, look at you. You look better than 99.9% of the population. But you're comparing yourself to other people on stage that look just as good as you. But how do you deal with that? Because to me, that is just an enigma where I understand that, because I even dealt with some of that stuff myself, where I was telling friends like, oh, do all my abs look good? And they're like, dude, like Ryan, you have like an 8-pack when I was like in my best shape. And so I understand that to a certain extent, but how do you deal with that fact that like once you get started in this lifestyle, you are never going to be good enough?
right. That is a great question. And that's always something I try to talk to like my newer competitive clients about, because that's something that I feel like is not talked about enough. But to an extent, obviously, we all deal with you know body issues, appearance issues, self esteem issues, what have you. Especially with current day and age with technology and social media. And then obviously with bodybuilding, it's kind of even more exacerbated because that's the nature of the sport. You're getting compared literally based off of how you look. Um, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't easy. Um, but it's something that gets better every year. And honestly, sometimes my husband even had to kind of check me a few weeks ago, because he's a pro. He's been a pro, and his pro debut was last year at Tampa Pro, and he noticed I was kind of falling in a pattern that he did the same thing before his pro debut. And it was like a few weeks ago, I started, I wasn't tuning out the noise. With bodybuilding, you got to tune out the noise. There's always keyboard warriors, there's always people hating. People are always going to have opinions. And you know, he saw me, looking at comparing myself to other pros, other, seasoned pros too, that have been competing. A lot of them have even already been on the Olympia stage. And he saw me, I was comparing myself to them, and he was just like, look, you're good enough. You made it here. You got your pro card. You deserve to be here. Just do what you need to do. You know what you got to do. Just do it. All that other noise, you can't control it. I can't control who shows up. I can't control what other people do, but I will say the things I can control are my diet. I can control how hard I'm training. I can control my posing and my presentation and how I present myself on stage. And I can control my mindset. I think so many competitors get trust me, it is so easy to get so engulfed in everything that's going around you and who's doing well and who's placing well, and you have expectations for yourself that you want to live up to, when at the end of the day you just got to focus on being better than you were the day before. And that's always what I remind myself whenever I find myself getting in those moments where I'm looking at other pros and I'm just like, I'm never going to match up. I'm here for a reason. I'm better than I was yesterday, and I'm gonna keep getting better.
Absolutely. And Haley, I have a task for you. When we're done recording this podcast, you have to remind me to tell you someone, when we're talking about internet warriors, you
Yeah,
have to remind me to tell you the theory that this one guy sent to me as to why he thinks I do this pod. Because I do two other podcasts. I do my celebrity podcast and then I do a
yeah.
history podcast. Remind me as soon as we're done recording because I don't want to get into it on here because it'll take us like forever. And I'll do the short and sweet. Remind me to tell you about this guy who emailed me his theory about why I do this podcast in particular. And it relates to the other two podcasts. Like the amount of time and effort that this person put into it, just remind me. So everyone, I will not tell you that because again, it's a whole different thing. But okay, so moving on. But I just had to tell her that on the podcast right now to remind me because I might forget at the end here. But yeah, I mean that just dealing with yeah, I mean realizing too. You said it perfectly, and I honestly never even thought of that myself. Where it's like, yeah, we all go through issues with our body, even if you don't compete in bodybuilding. I mean, especially in today's day and age, where it's like, yeah, bodybuilding it might be amplified a little bit more, but it's like we still, even on a microscopic level, deal with issues about insecurity. I mean, yeah, don't even get me started on my calves, everyone. So that's the that hits right home hard and home to me, as well. But has your nutrition at all changed, this year as opposed to last year? Because like you said, I know you enjoyed yourself during the off season, but like now that you're on prep, has your nutrition changed as you put on more size, or have you kept things somewhat the same? Where do you fall on that?
Um, it's fairly similar. I mean, usually we stick to all, the similar same foods. Throughout the off season, my coach did a really good job of, feeding me well and building my body up to being able to handle a good amount of food. So when we it did come time to, start prep again, we didn't have to pull food so hard, so fast, and so that's helped a lot. I think other than that, I mean, it's pretty similar. Obviously, right now, fully clean, no free meals. Haven't had those in a good amount of time. But like I said, off season, my coach is really good about, he off season he encourages me. As long as I'm hungry and I'm not getting too fat, he's all about, I'm cool with you eating more food. So for the most part, I keep the amounts, or I change the amounts, but keep the same foods. And then off season, every once in a while, I'll give myself a little leeway.
These coaches have a dream job mainly in the fact that like they can call women fat and get away with it. Like that's I mean, these guys have a green card for that. I mean, they can really, they can get away with. And I found it funny because I talked to some people who were like their spouse is their coach too. I was like, okay, these guys can call their wives like, oh, you're looking a little bit like watery today. You look like you've put on. I mean, it's like they have a get away from jail card. I mean, but
Yeah.
hey, that again goes. And I've said this podcast is hilarious in the fact that like this is the one podcast where I can actually get women to willingly admit their weight without even me asking. Like this is the only scenario on the planet. So hey, there's positives. There's positives. To this as well. But talking more about coaching because I have found with coaching it is very hit or miss. I've had guests on where they have a coach for a year and then things don't work out so well. And then I've had other guests where they have the same coach for decades. And it just depends on the coach. But what, in your opinion, makes a good coach? Because I found with coaching, it's a lot like being a teacher where you can scold a student and maybe that's what that student needs where it helps them and makes them better. But if you scold another student, they might just like break down and, it just, they're done really. Like you can't really do that much for them. In your opinion, what makes a coach good?
I mean, other than the obvious, them having the knowledge base, the experience to back them up. Other than that, what makes a really good coach, kind of going off of what you were saying, is they have to be able to see the client as an individual, as a person as a whole that has their own life, their own things about them, their own difficulties, their own struggles, and you do, like you said, you have to cater, your coaching to that, which is not always easy for coaches to kind of get in tune with their clients like that. So some of it is just communication, and a lot of it is just having that like innate ability to read your client and be able to communicate with them, but also be able to explain things to them that makes them feel at ease. Like I know one thing I love about my coach is he does a really good job of everything he does. He explains why he does it, and he prepares me even like as he's doing or as we're doing things. If he'll let me know like, hey, with this change, this may happen, and so I'm not only like being educated on why we're doing what we're doing, which makes me feel more comfortable about what we're doing, but also, what to expect, things to look out for. That way, if it does happen, I don't freak out, especially in prep. You're so like on edge anyway, and anything can bring that cortisol, that stress level up, and you don't want that. So, um, Derek does a great job of that. That's one thing I really like about him.
How do you deal with stress? Because stress is so important to maintain a certain level of stress free, because people, especially not familiar with the lifestyle, don't understand how much stress plays when it comes to either weight gain, retaining weight, just other aspects that would have such a negative effect. I mean, stress and bodybuilding are not best friends. So how do you try? Because like, let's be honest, even if someone were to try to have as stress free a life as possible, they are going to get stressed. Like, it's inevitable. So how do you mitigate that when you have those moments where, like, no matter what, you are going to be stressed?
Yes, you're so right, because that's exactly what I tell people. I say
Especially being a nurse practitioner, it's like, yeah, come on, that's a given.
there's no way, 0 chance you will ever get rid of stress. You're right. So it's no matter what, you got to figure out what works for you. What works for me, um, a lot easier said than done, right? Because I myself get quite stressed many times. A lot of times, just taking a step back, taking some deep breaths, really gathering my thoughts. Um, if it's just maybe something at the end of the day to just kind of wind me down, whether it's like a hot Epsom salt bath, or watching a movie with my husband, listening to music, doing something like, I mean, ca- going back to cardio, like exercising, but cardio for me is actually like very, very stress relieving, exercising in general. So just training in general for me is a stress relief. Oh,
I will say though, I wish that the population, because I just have some anti-anxiety meds that I only take like probably like once every month or something like that. Like if I just get really anxious, which is very rare, I wish everyone would just be able to take one of those like every day, because like it knocks you the hell out, where like you feel nothing. You're just like, oh, I'm just like in it. You feel like you're just in a cloud basically, where you're just like, and I was like, okay, this might be, what heroin feels like or something like that. So it's like, I understand why these people might like do this type of stuff. But again, everyone, I gotta say, unless you really prescribe for it, don't take any of that stuff. But yeah, again, I rarely take that. Like one day when the only time I've ever recorded podcasts when I took that was when I had 4 podcasts in a day, and I am too Minnesotan to like try to reschedule things with people, where I'm just like, okay, fine, we'll just do this and see what happens. So I took one like right before my first one, and like that whole day just went by super fast, and like I got them done, and like they actually did a good job, and I was like, maybe I should start doing this more, and I was like, no, we're not gonna do it like every day, but like that was for a special circumstance right there, just because I was just like, okay, how am I gonna get through 4 of these, talking for 4 hours, and surprisingly it went better than I thought it would. So again, everyone, you got to find ways to de-stress yourself, and hers is a little bit more healthier than mine, so I will give her at least props for that. But I do have to ask you, I mean, being a nurse practitioner, this whole pandemic really made us fatter as a nation, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, I went to the state fair this last weekend, and just seeing some of the people there, like, and I'm in Minnesota, which is usually either the fittest or the second fittest. It's usually between like us and Maine, or like the 2 fittest states in the nation when it comes to like our rates of obesity and like how many people exercise. But like even then, like to be like, if we're one of the healthiest states or the healthiest state, and I see this many like obese people just out of shape, what advice do you have for someone who's a nurse practitioner? I mean, just to like, it's gotten to the point where I jokingly say this, but like I'm not joking as much. Like, we almost need to go back to public fact shaming, where it's just like, just put them in a square, just like and I'm joking, everyone, but it's like we're getting to the point now where we're almost reaching that tipping point as a nation. But what advice do you have just to maybe help us take just one step back?
um, trust me, coming from a healthcare provider's perspective, I completely understand people's frustrations with the healthcare system as a whole. I I understand that we don't have healthcare, we have sick care. There's very little emphasis on preventative care, holistic care. Um, so if I can give anyone a piece of advice, is just
Move to Canada.
just at least do your diligence, because the easiest thing you can do, these are simple things you can do. One, drink water. Your kidneys will thank you. Drink water, please. People, be hydrated. Drink your water. Don't just drink soda or just coffee or energy drinks. Throw some glasses of water in between. That's an easy one. That also helps with hunger too. If you're staying more hydrated and drinking more water, your belly's going to be a little bit fuller. You're hopefully not going to eat as much. So that's one. And then other than that, just making small little changes in your diet, nutrition, moving a little bit more. You don't have to, if you're someone that never goes to the gym, you don't have to go from 0 to 100 and start training 0 days a week to 7 days a week. Just even start with a 15, 20-minute walk in the morning. Steps. Walking is literally the healthiest thing you can do, and it's so easy. So those are some things. Just small little stepwise daily changes. Don't cut all carbs out or all sugars out, or these all or nothing fad diets are usually, they may work initially, but they're not going to last. You're probably going to gain that weight back. So you're better off making small sustainable changes that you will keep over time.
Absolutely. And for anyone that says like, "Oh, I don't like water. I don't like drinking water." This isn't a sponsor, but I'm gonna plug this until they might offer me a sponsor. This right here, Crystal Light. You put
I
this, it's
love it.
flavoring. Yeah. You
Love
put
it.
you put that stuff in your. It's only 10 calories. You put it in your water. I got the fruit punch flavor. That is my cocaine basically, where it is the best. Like, it's 10 calories basically. Then it's better than your 150 calories that you get from one can of soda. And I put 2 of them in my jug when I go out for a walk, so that's 20 calories, and it's basically almost a gallon of water basically that you have. Where it is, and it's great flavor. It tastes terrific. So yeah, it's just little stuff like that. And again, Crystal Light, give me a sponsor. I mean, if you can I don't even need money. Just give me like a lifetime supply, or like even a year supply of that stuff, because I run through it. Like if I'm walking, 5 times a week, and I do 2 of those things, a night, again, they're 39 cents a pop to everyone. So they're cheap too. So, for
There's
60,
so many different
yeah,
flavors.
yeah, for like 80 cents too. So less than $1, you can have a gallon's worth of stuff, which is,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I don't get how that isn't, more of a thing. So yeah, that's my little piece of advice right there too. But again, like, just go for walks too, people, where it's like, it's free. You don't, if you have the means to go for walks, I mean, just do it, because that really does. I mean, I lost, like 15 pounds alone in like 3 months just from walking and not doing anything else. Yeah, it's,
There you go. And it's not,
and I
yeah,
didn't even need weight to lose. Like, mine was just muscle basically like shedding off as I was crying the whole time. But like, hey, it happened. So,
but it's true though. Like something like walking, it's so easy. It's not like that. Like walking is very fatiguing. A lot of people think they have to go, bust their butt for 30 to 60 minutes and be miserable. And yeah, that's a good workout too. I'm crazy because I like that stuff. But if you want to just go for a 30-minute walk, you're going to get a ton of benefit from that too.
I mean, the main thing that kept me motivated when I was losing some of the muscles, that the doctors were telling me, like, hey, you have a significant risk of having a heart attack if you keep this up in like your 30s and 40s, just because with my hyperactiveness in general, like my heart rate has always, been a little bit higher. And they're like, especially with your increased muscle size, it's like, you got to do that. So like, as I was like thinking like, no, I can't do this. And I was like, okay, Ryan, do you want to die in your 30s or 40s from a heart attack? And I was like, I might want to do the Elvis route, but not necessarily how he died, everyone. So, that's just, that was a thing that really considered me. So yeah, a lot of people do need to consider, the health of it too, where it's like, if everyone got a health check though, we would have so many problems. So it's like, do it one at a time, everyone. Cause I don't want like 60% of this country to realize that like they're going to die within like 5 years because of what they are at. So again, that's my little rant on the health system, the health and wellness of our country. And believe me, I could be a lot more severe in critiquing on it, but I do want to keep somewhat of my audience, on this, and not just, like take away a significant percent of them. But I mean, Hayley, I asked you this last time, and I elaborated on it a little bit further, because this is a newer-ish question where we talked about before, like, you're not the average looking woman, where if you walk out in public, you're like, it's like a mini celebrity, where it's like you are going to draw people's attention. If you're dressed the way you are right now, people, it's just human nature when they see something that's not the normal to just be like, oh wow, that's fascinating. And some people talk about, like some negative encounters that they might get, which in this day and age, luckily it's few and far between. Like, it's so much more positive than negative. But is there one positive encounter that you've had with someone that really just stands out above every other encounter, where you're just like, okay, this was like someone really, changed your day or did something?
That's a good question. Um, I don't, I can't really think of one person in particular. Um, I'm thankful for every day being able to have the opportunity to, do what I love to do, and be, blessed with an amazing support system, an amazing husband, and being able to meet people from all around the world. and help them, in any way, whether it's, you know, giving them a little diet advice or maybe a tip with their training or something like that, just to be able to like connect and talk with people more. I learned has been really fulfilling because growing up, I was not always the most talkative and extroverted person, and I've gotten
Could
more.
you tell that I was the exact opposite of you then?
I could have guessed.
Just try to imagine the priest or the elementary school Ryan Johnson trying to sit
Oh,
still in a chair while the
oh
teachers
man.
were telling you to do this. Like it was. That's why to this day, like if I have friends that are teachers, I just tell them, I was like, you do realize that like not every child is like, for me, that education system of like just sitting in a chair for 8 hours, like it's not going to work for you. So that's why everyone that still talks about like educate how great the education system, I always say is like, well, for the 10% of students that are like me, it's not. But that's a whole different tangent, everyone. But I'm just getting it. Yes.
I would even argue that it's probably more than 10%
Oh,
that are like that.
but I lowball it just to make just
Sure, sure.
as
But
someone
it's
who
just
as someone who's very into like baseball and stats and stuff like that, you always lowball it so that you can always be right no matter what, really. Then so.
that's fair. It's fair.
Like those damn weathermen. Don't even get me started on that. Where it's well, I'm going
I
out for
don't
my walk. Yeah, there's a 10% chance of rain, and I go out on my walk, and we get half an inch of rain basically while I'm out on my walk. Then because it was a 10% chance. So
know. What are they
I mean,
what are you doing?
they're the one job where they get paid to be wrong, usually wrong
I
more than they're right. So I don't.
I think I lost my calling.
We're
Should
in
have
the
just
wrong jobs. Yeah, we definitely screwed up on that one. But but like people said, I have the voice for television. I don't have the face for television, and I accept that. So again, you have your significant areas. So there's always radio. If this always falls apart, everyone. But I mean, Hayley, this is a question that I also just came up with after like 500 guests, which proves how good of a host I am that it took me that long to just figure out this basic question to ask. But I think this in the back of my head, regardless. It's just human nature in me. No matter how many bodybuilders or health and fitness people I've had on, I still think this to myself deep down. Why do they do this to themselves? Why do they put themselves through this? I hear all these prep brain stories and I'm just like, okay, like why do they do it? Obviously, I know why because I've talked to so many of you guys, but like just the human side of me deep down is just like, okay, why do they still do this to themselves? Like I hear about all the stuff that goes wrong in the sport and it's just like, why do they do it? I bet you still hear that to this day. And if you were to tell me that you have never thought that once, even during this last prep, I will just say, okay, she's telling the truth, but deep down I'll be like, okay, she's lying. But like, look, I'll just go along with it. She's the guest. But how do you tell people like when they ask you like, Hayley, I mean, completely honest, like, why do you do this?
I mean, oh yeah, you're right. Every prep, I mean, I think every competitor at some point, if not multiple times, has that thought, why am I doing this? Like, I want to quit. Like, let's pack it up. This is dumb. Trust me, I am no different. Um, I think, you know, you have those moments, but then, in between those moments, you have other moments where you're like, you look back and you're just like, yeah, I did that. And every time, every prep, I get through a little bit more. I push myself past, a little bit farther past my own limits. And it just like, I think just the practice of one, always showing up no matter what, and two, like being able to look back and see, okay, I've done this, I've been through this, this, and this. I can do anything, and it just prepares you for it because we all know life, it happens. Like no matter who you are, I don't care. You're gonna go through some stuff in life. Um, and bodybuilding, that's where it's like so much more than just muscles and pretty hair, pretty makeup, and having a pretty suit on stage. It's like the other, 364 days a year where you're grinding and you're working towards a better you every single day, and you're doing stuff that other people wouldn't be able to do, and you can just look back at yourself and know that okay, like I'm I'm okay. I've done okay. There's going back to what we talked about before, and having this perfectionist mindset, and bodybuilders always want to be perfect and stuff like that, and yeah, it's true. I think it's kind of the nature of the sport, but I think the ones that are the most level headed and are probably be able to have the best success and longest runs in bodybuilding are the ones that are able to take a step back and compartmentalize some things and be able to, objectively look at areas that maybe they can improve, but also like clapping for their wins and being proud when they did some good stuff too. I think that's one thing that I myself, I have trouble with, and I think a lot of people do, is just, patting yourself on the back every now and then. It's okay to do that. It's okay to be proud of yourself. So I mean, that's kind of what gets me through it. I'm just, when I'm going through something tough or I think I can't do it, I'm just like, I did this stuff before. I've done it for years. I prepped and was working full time and in grad school full time and doing, 2 hours of cardio a day and training. And like, I can do that. Like, I can do anything.
That is one thing that I have taken out of this podcast is like, yeah, if you can compete in a bodybuilding show, it's like being in the military where it's like if you do that, like you can accomplish anything. Or the rest of your life is just easy peasy. Not easy peasy, but it's like significantly easier because you've realized that like you can accomplish something that so few people can. But yeah, that is definitely a thing. And when it comes down to show day, as you're getting, ready for a show, what is your favorite part about show day and what is your least favorite part about show day?
Favorite part about show day. I think, I mean, just being able to see everything come together, finally. I mean, you work for so many weeks for this one day. So, it's really cool, especially like waking up on show day and seeing what you look like. And it's, the best you've ever looked. And you're feeling good. And you're just like excited to show it off and show everyone your hard work. So that's probably my favorite part. My least favorite part is probably, I would either say the tan or waiting backstage because I always either get way too cold or I pump up too early or it's hard sometimes gauging backstage like when you should pump up and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm not a fan. Plus, I just hate waiting. I'm terrible at just waiting. I always have to be doing something. So when you're backstage, it's just hurry up and wait. So I hate that.
Huh, another ADD problem of hers that I also have myself, where it's like, yeah, sometimes I'm always ready for these podcasts 5 minutes before start time, and then yeah, I'm just waiting. I'm just like, okay, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Where I'm literally just like counting down the time, and that's again nothing on any of the guests that I have on, but like that's just me as a person in general. So yeah, I understand that completely, at least on the not being too good with dealing with time and stuff like that. But when we do have you on in a year, and I mean, again, I will try my best to have it be as close to this day as possible. Who knows? We might get on the day again. Where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding journey? Where would you like to just be at in your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved?
So, um, in terms of bodybuilding, um, you know, uh, I we'll see. I mean, I kind of have to see. We'll see how this year goes. I have a feeling after this year, I'll probably want another good long off season to grow a little bit more. But hopefully, this time next year, I'll either maybe be in prep again or have already competed. We'll see. Eventually, I would love to be on the Olympia stage one day. Um, I don't want to say that I'm not going to work for that. I'm competing as a pro now, so gotta gotta compete to win. So, but I understand that I'm 32 years old, so I'm not in this to like push things real hard, real fast. I still have, I think, a good amount of time, of training, getting, more nutrition in and everything, and just kind of seeing where my body takes me, and just do it safe, smart, without any injuries, things like that. In terms of my career, I would love to, still working as an NP, but also I've kind of been focusing a little bit more this year on the coaching aspect of my coaching business. So I would love to really spend more time, especially after this prep, and focus on that and kind of flesh it out. Make sure that I'm, offering the best I can to my clients and really, really blossom that.
I honestly think those are great goals to have. And I mean, I asked you this last time too, and I'm going to continue to ask it to every single guest. No matter, I've had guests I've had on like 5 times, and I still ask them this at the very end. If you could change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, if someone were to walk up to you and say, you know, Haley, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport, and everyone would go along with it, will be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
Oh, I wish this is something that I don't think they would ever do, but I wish the IFBB as a whole would have, um, whether it's, a staff of healthcare professionals, doctors, NPs, PAs, what have you, but healthcare professionals that are actually monitoring, these athletes, monitoring their lab work, their health markers, maybe recommending health scans for them to make sure that we're mitigating any sort of risk.
You should be forced to do blood work before you step on stage. I'm sorry, but like that should be mandatory.
I agree. And I mean, as you know, in bodybuilding, it's a big problem. And one, I think it's just because of lack of education, and two, I think it's just a lot of people is if it's out of sight, out of mind. So I feel like if the NPC IFBB actually had a staff, of people where athletes could go to, to monitor lab work with the bodybuilding perspective in mind, because you have to take that in mind too when you're looking at lab work, because the things that these bodybuilders are taking are going to affect their lab work different from your average person. So a staff of healthcare professionals that have that knowledge background to work with these athletes, make sure they're doing what they need to do, and make sure they're giving them the recommendations needed to make sure that they're being healthy. There's way too many of these bodybuilders that are dropping dead, and I think there's, to an extent, we're not going to be able to prevent every death, but I think we could prevent a lot of them if we do everything we can. And right now, I don't think we are. So that's one thing I really, really wish they would change.
I'm glad you brought that up because I couldn't have said it better myself. Where it's like, yeah, I mean, there are some, especially, and it goes down to coaching too, where some coaches, you know, they prescribe these protocols where like I'm surprised that some of these guests are still alive that I have on, like the ones that have told me about them, and then also on the fact where it's like it's not on the coaches, where like part of it too is the competitors need to do their own research too as well, where it's like there should never be like, and I get it where some of them are so dieted down that they're just like, okay, I'll just take whatever you say. I'm just too tired to even really care. But like you, in this day and age, like maybe in the 80s and 90s that would be an excuse, where like you didn't have the internet where you could just literally just like type something in and be like, hey, what are the side effects of doing this, or what are the side effects of doing that, and like what are the health risks. So again, yeah, that just the knowledge, like you said, there needs to be more knowledge out there, and it needs to be. And a whole other side of mine brings me back to even now, this day and age, where if I get a really bad cut, I still have the mindset where if I don't look at it, it's not as bad as what I thought. Or like if something bad happens to me, even as a kid, I was that one where I was like, okay, as long as I don't look at it, it's not that bad. And then I take one look at it, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it's pretty bad. So like, yeah, that applies, perfectly as well. And now, lastly, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Well, I already shouted out my coach, Derek Natcher, Loud Performance Training, who's my awesome coach. My husband, Marcus Perry, gotta shout out him. He's my number one fan. He gets me through.
Oh wait, so are you now Haley Perry?
I am, yes,
Okay,
Haley Perry.
I just got to make sure I do that when I publish the podcast. Then, yeah, so the Haley Perry.
Yes, good call. Yes. So definitely him. He's my rock. Everything. I couldn't have done any of this without him. Other than that, I mean, Jim Seitzer. He's another huge person in my life. One of my mentors. He's the creator of the Earthquake Bar, one of the bars, the bamboo bars that we use a lot in our training. He's been an amazing, amazing human friend, resource, everything. He's taught me so much of what I know about training and bodybuilding and powerlifting, and I love him to death. So, other than that, Team Allmax Nutrition, my sponsor, BB Custom Suits. She makes my amazing, beautiful competition suits. Becca, I love her. Who else? I think that's all I got for now. I'm sorry if I forgot anyone.
No worries. And again, everyone, if you heard this, I don't know, it was in the background, but you just heard the most Midwestern thing possible, where the first Wednesday of every month at 1 p.m., the tornado sirens go off just to test them and make sure that they're working.
Oh, do you get it at 1 p.m.? We get it at noon.
So it just might be like different time zones, where I remember like that freaked me out when I was a young kid and stuff like that, where I was like, we're all gonna die, and so, but then I was like,
I
no, they're
didn't know
just
that was anywhere else. I thought that was just like an Ohio thing.
it's all tornado country, which
Oh,
if
okay.
you want to hear like a weird, because I looked up your last name. I remember last time I found out. So a weird fact that I like to bring out then, because just for Hayley, I think now I'll do a weird fact where it's like tornadoes really are basically a United States or like North America phenomenon. Where if you look in like Europe, they don't really ever get tornadoes, and if they do, they're like really really weak, just because of how we're positioned on the globe with like all the oceans and stuff. I think again, I'm not. Don't quote me on this, everyone, but like so yeah, just the inner part of the United States really is the only part where really like I think we get like 10 times the amount of tornadoes that any place on the planet ever gets. So it's just yeah. It's
Crazy.
yeah. So again, just the weird geography stuff that we toot on this podcast. But again, everyone go and give Hayley a follow. And can I just say, when you said your husband's last name was Perry, I can't not think of Steve Perry though. So that's like I was just that name popped in my head when it came on. So
I was thinking either I thought of that, or what was really exciting to me when I changed my name is my initials are HP now, and I'm a huge Harry Potter nerd. How nerdy is that? Is that nerdy?
Well, 2 winters ago, I ordered on Amazon that butter beer that you can buy where it's
You can buy it?
yeah, it's butter flavored soda, and it was pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. Like it was caramel kind of. It was actually like more like caramelish flavor, but it was really good. Now the first time I ordered it, it arrived in broken bottles, so I had to resend it back. So thanks Amazon. But then the second time it arrived nice and fine. But yeah, it's. I mean, it was like $20 for like 8 of them, so it's good. Like I'd say just get them once because like they're not worth. It's probably even more now with inflation and everything. But like it's they're good, but I don't think they're good for that money. But I'd say definitely just get them just so you can try it because yeah, they were pretty good. And I also along with that package bought the people now make what Coca-Cola originally tasted like when it was invented in 1880s or something like that because they found the recipe. It tastes nothing like Coca-Cola. Like
Really?
it's bad though. Like it's like
Oh,
because
okay.
remember it was invented sort of like as a syrup, or it was invented sort of like as a medicine to take really for people.
Okay.
So it has
Yeah.
that medicine kind of taste to it where you're like, okay, yeah, this is definitely something that I would get like if I got like sick or something like that. But unfortunately they didn't put cocaine in it like they did originally, but that would have been
Shoot.
that would have been, and I mean that's a huge thing for me. But again, everyone, before we get pulled for drug references on this podcast, I mean, Hayley, I cannot thank you enough for coming back on. It was an absolute delight to talk to you, and I cannot wait to have you on a year from now.
Ryan, thank you so much. It's always such an awesome time talking with you.
I appreciate that. That is my goal of this podcast. And again, everyone, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.